Hello friends, let us now learn about in the barium sulfate. Barium sulfate will coat the mucosa. Coat the mucosa. That is one important property. Now, what are the properties or characteristics which will influence the coating of barium sulfate? Coating of mucosa by barium sulfate. So, properties which are influencing coating. If you see the properties, we have different properties. One, additives. So the properties which influence the coating are, we have additives, density. Then third property is stability of the mixture. If there is any flocculation or formation of precipitations, adding the preservatives or forming anti-foaming agents, or coloring agents, or sweetening agents. So all these will influence the coating of barium sulfate. So we will learn each of them in detail. Okay. First, additives. Now, additives are added. When you add additives, these additives will influence with the stability or settling. It will influence the stability or settling of barium sulfate. It will influence the viscosity, charge of the barium sulfate molecule. It will also influence the mucosal coating definitely, and it will also influence the thickness of the barium sulfate and also the flocculation or precipitation of barium sulfate in the secretions is also influenced by additives. Now, if you add more of additive, lots of amount of additive, if it is added, then obviously because of more substance, the viscosity is high. So if the viscosity is high, the suspension will not flow easily. So water will have more viscosity, less viscosity, so it flows easily when compared to oil, which has more viscosity. So suspension flows with difficulty here. Because of this high viscosity, the suspension will not flow easily, it flows with difficulty. So here the additives which are added in the barium sulfate mixture are a professional secret or trade secret for many manufacturers. So varied amounts of additives can be added when we prepare barium to make sure that it achieves the properties which we require while preparing barium sulfate on our own. So additives will definitely influence the coating of the mucosa. Next, second property is density. Right. For density, first and foremost, you will have to make the suspension using required weight of barium sulfate. The particular amount of barium sulfate should be taken, and then you will have to add it in the suspension volume, and you will get the particular density of barium sulfate. Now, one more important thing is that so for densities, measuring barium, the barium powder cannot using cups cannot be a standard preparation. So the barium powder which is present, this should not be measured with cups because the compactness of filling the cups may vary. Reason is that means if there is a cup, you can either fill the cup with barium tightly or it can be filled loosely. So as a result, the compactness of filling The compactness of filling the barium may vary. So as a result, using the cups for measuring barium powder is not a good practice. Okay. Next, the next important property is stability. So obviously the barium which is made, that should be made in such a way, the barium preparation which is manufactured, it is manufactured in such a way that it is stable suspension. That means, what does stable suspension means? Stable suspension means that in the suspension, in the one with fluid or water, in the water, the barium should be evenly distributed. So this is a good suspension. But if this same barium, if it settles down, if in the water, if it settles down, then obviously it is unstable suspension and it is not recommended. Stability, the barium particles should be evenly distributed in the suspension. So to make sure that the barium particles should be equally distributed in the suspension, we have certain agents called as suspending agents which can be used. In these suspending agents, we have gum acacia, or we even have carboxymethyl cellulose. So this carboxymethyl cellulose is added to water, and that mixture of carboxymethyl cellulose with water is added to barium to make a paste. Okay, so these both suspending agent will prevent settling of barium. So when they prevent settling of barium, this results in a stable suspension. And one more important thing is, these agents will increase the viscosity of suspension. They will increase the viscosity of suspension, and thus they should be used in minimum amount to attain the required stability. So because they increase the viscosity, they should be used in minimum amount. You should not overuse them, because if we overuse them, this will increase the viscosity of the suspension. Then, when do you say that there is adequate stability? That the stability is sufficient. When do you say that there is adequate stability? A suspension is said to have an adequate stability if it does not settle. If it does not settle at a rate of more than 1/10 at the end of 3 hours. At the rate of more than 1/10, if it does not settle at the rate of more than 1/10 at end of 3 hours, then we can say that it has adequate stability. We can say that it has adequate stability if it does not settle at a rate of more than 1/10 at the end of 3 hours. Okay. Now that means, if you leave the solution of this suspension of barium, and if it does not settle by the end of 3 hours, then we can say that it is adequate stability. Now, carboxymethyl cellulose. If you see some important points about this suspending agent, which is carboxymethyl cellulose. This carboxymethyl cellulose, number one, it is a suspending agent, definitely, and it is also hygroscopic. Because it is a hygroscopic, that means it retains water. Okay, because it retains water, it will prevent settling of particles. Because of this property of retaining water, it will prevent or it will inhibit the settling of particles. Thus, it will also prevent sedimentation, which is nothing but settling, and thus keeps the size of the particles same. It will also keep the size of the particles same. Thus, the carboxymethyl cellulose is used now in the preparation of barium to maintain the stability of the barium suspension. Then we have flocculation. This flocculation is reduction in number of particles by formation of larger masses. That means, what is flocculation? Flocculation is if the suspension is in contact with any of the ionic solutions. In our body, we have lots of ionic solutions. Like these ionic solutions can be either gastric secretions, or we have intestinal secretions. All these contain ions. So whenever the suspension comes in contact with these ionic solutions, then this suspension can form clumps. So there can be formation of clumps can be seen. And when there are formation of clumps, this will reduce the number of particles present in the suspension. Okay, so this is one thing which is called as flocculation. So in order to prevent flocculation to happen, we have certain things which we can add to the suspension. We can add antacids. These antacids will neutralize the gastric acid. They will neutralize the gastric acid or intestinal secretions, and thus they prevent flocculation. Okay, that is number one. Number two, these antacids also make the suspension alkaline. When they make the suspension alkaline, so the intestinal secretions are also alkaline. So the alkaline intestinal secretions will not flocculate, because both these are alkaline, so obviously there is no flocculation to occur. Right. Now, what antacids are used in the barium sulfate preparation? In barium sulfate preparation, antacids like, we can use sodium citrate, which is actually most commonly used. We have aluminium hydroxide and magnesium sulfate can be used as antacids. Then the next important thing which can affect the viscosity is coating of mucosa is preservatives. Okay, in preservatives, actually, if you see the barium sulfate, normally it is inert. But when this barium sulfate is added to with additives, okay, these additives with barium sulfate will increase or will activate the fungal growth. Okay, so in order to prevent this fungal growth, we add preservatives. So preservatives will inhibit this step of fungal growth. So these preservatives are methyl. Okay, in the preservatives, previously we used to use methyl paraben. So methyl paraben is used previously, but presently now we use sodium metabisulfide is used. Bisulfate is used. Now recently we use sodium metabisulfate. Next, after preservatives, we have anti-foaming agents. Okay, these anti-foaming agents can also alter the coating of the barium. So what are these anti-foaming agents? Anti-foaming agents are mainly, we have simethicone, or we have methyl polysiloxone. Okay, the simethicone or methyl polysiloxone, these are added, and these will prevent the formation of air bubbles. Because actually, if there is foaming, anti-foaming is prevention of formation of foam. If there is formation of foam, you will see that air bubbles are seen. Okay, these air bubbles, if they are there, they will mimic polyps. Okay, so as a result, to prevent that, we will have to use simethicone or methyl polysiloxane. These are anti-foaming agents and thus prevent the formation of air bubbles. How do they prevent the formation of air bubbles? That is by they reduce the surface tension of air bubbles. Okay, they reduce the surface tension of gas bubbles which are formed, and thus they will these gaseous bubbles, these bubbles will now coalesce and they are released as air. Once they are coalesced, they are released as gases itself instead of forming air bubbles. So thus they will prevent this. So when you have, there are smaller bubbles which are formed, they will form a bigger one and thus they are released as gas. Okay, this is what happens in simethicone and methyl polysiloxane is added. Next, we also have coloring agent can also be used. Okay, coloring agent is not generally necessary, but we can use coloring agents like erythrocin is a coloring agent which is used. Next, we have sweetening agents. Sweetening agent can also be used also. This is for better swallowing of the patient. If the patient has to take barium swallow, he has to swallow it. Then obviously if it is sweeter in taste, then it is easier for the patient to swallow. So we can use saccharin or any fruit essences can be used as sweetening agent. Okay, because if you see the barium has chalky taste. This chalky taste is unpleasant, and because this chalky taste is unpleasant, it can result in nausea in the patient. So as a result, this saccharin or fruit juices decreases the nausea. Okay, and one more thing, chocolate is not used as sweetening agent. Chocolate can also be used, but it is not commonly used. Reason, because this chocolate can result in allergic reaction. So in order to prevent that, we do not use chocolate as sweetening agent normally. So these are the important properties of the barium which can um, facilitate or decrease the coating of barium mucosa. Thank you.